Hello friends and welcome back to another video. Today, this is it. I heard relatively recently about this book that I heard that a gender-swapped Twilight exists, and I just kinda had to know how that was gonna work. This is in fact written by Stephenie Meyer. It came out in 2015 for the 10th anniversary of Twilight. It's called Life and Death, Twilight Reimagined, 10th Anniversary Edition. The preface of this book kinda lets us know what we're getting into. It's really wholesome. She talks about how much fun she had writing it, how much she loves these new characters. She also says that most of the changes to this book are actually just her improving on her writing from the original Twilight, that there's actually not that many changes on account of all of the characters' genders being swapped. And yes, that is all of the characters. I was expecting it would just be Edward and Bella would be flipped, but no. The only major character that is exactly the same is Charlie. Bella's parents are of course separated, and apparently it would be very unlikely in the late 80s, early 90s for the dad to get custody over the child instead of the mom, especially if her dad were to be as chaotic and artsy and always between jobs as Bella's mom is, if her mom were to be her dad. You get it. So it would feel like a hole in the story to her if she were to flip Charlie and Renee's genders. Bella's parents. Are you keeping up with all my hot Twilight knowledge? So Charlie is still Charlie, but every single other character's gender is flipped, which is to say all male characters are now female, all female characters are now male. Stephenie Meyer is Mormon, so we're working with two genders and one sexuality, which is heterosexuality. And that's just comedy gold to me, which is why I love Twilight so much. That being said though, one of the reasons why gender-flipped Twilight makes me excited is because naturally, the next reimagining would be a gay Twilight. And not to make us all feel old or anything, but the 20-year anniversary of, this is the 10th anniversary of Twilight special thing. The 20th anniversary of Twilight is only 4 years away, so Stephenie, there's still time. That's all I'm saying. And we know, obviously we know if it were to happen, it would probably be gay men, but let me dream for just another moment. When The Happiest Season came out, it feels like 500 years ago now, but technically it was only like 2 months. When The Happiest Season came out, there was all this discourse about like, why does the first gay Christmas movie have to be a story about coming out? Why does it have to be about them being gay? Like, why can't gay people just exist and have a Christmas rom-com without having to explain it to straight audiences? But also there's like so much pressure on it to be good representation because it is like the first gay Christmas movie. This is my ice cold take. I want to skip this whole phase that we're in right now of trying to figure out like what's good representation and how can gay storylines be mainstream. I don't care about good representation. I want only bad representation. Give me lesbian Twilight, The Christmas Prince, Hallmark movies. I want only bad lesbian content. And this, for some reason, I feel like is bringing me closer to it, you know? I feel like a really dedicated fan could probably edit together this, the original Twilight, and Midnight Sun in a way to create the ultimate gay Twilight. So if I ever lose my mind and start producing illegal copyright infringement bootleg lesbian Twilight, so, with my ulterior motives on the table, let's now get into the actual content of this book. But before we get into it, I need to tell you a little bit about this week's sponsor, Audible. I really like audiobooks, and I've been using Audible long before they first reached out to sponsor my channel. I love the convenience of being able to listen to something while I multitask. I think it's a really good option for people who feel like they don't have the time to read anymore. And Audible is now giving members even more with the all-new Plus catalog filled with thousands of audiobooks, Audible originals, podcasts, guided fitness and meditation programs, sleep tracks, and more. Right now, you can get an Audible membership for only $9.95 a month for your first 6 months, and you'll get a free audiobook immediately when you sign up. That can even be the very book I'll be reviewing today. I checked for you, and it is available on Audible. So with that being said, I think you should probably head on over to audible.com/strangeeons or text strangeeons to 500-500 to get your first 6 months for only $9.95 a month. Bella is now Beau, which is short for Beaufort. Edward is now Edith, spelled with a Y because she's not like other girls. The first sticky note that I put in this book, I have only underlined one tiny line here, and it is, unlike other guys. So the character is the same. Initially, she's not going too hard on the gender of it all. Like, Beau's not suddenly good at sports. He and Charlie don't sit around eating Chef Boyardee and cereal for every meal because nobody knows how to cook. Like, he's still a clumsy piece of shit. He still does all the family cooking, etc. I briefly thought there was typos in this book because for the first little bit, Edith is spelled with an I, and I knew from like the back cover and everything that it's Edith with a Y, but apparently like Beau was just like spelling it wrong in his head at first because that's the spelling of Edith you would expect, but then he finds out it's spelled with a Y and he's like, that's so much artsier. Oh my god, I love it. She's such a beautiful name. So he asks his good friend Jeremy, that's Jessica, Anna Kendrick's character, his good pal Jeremy, who they are. And Jeremy says he muttered his answer under his breath. Those are the Cullens and the Hales. Edith and Eleanor Cullen, Jessamine and Royal Hale, and the one who left was Archie Cullen. They live with Dr. Cullen and her husband. Those are the names that we get. We got Edward becomes Edith, which... Edith with a Y. Which I like. I do like that name. Emmett becomes Eleanor, which is I feel neutrally about. Alice becomes Archie, which I think is good. Also kind of has like the same vibe. Jasper becomes Jessamine, which is also pretty good. And Rosalie becomes Royal. She did pretty good by all of the Cullens in their flipped names, but is Royal even a real name? Has anybody ever been named Royal? Beau does mention that they all sound like kind of old-timey names that nobody really has anymore. Hint, hint. So I do trust that Stephanie Meyer probably put in the minimal effort to Google fucking most popular baby names of 1907 and name them accordingly. So, moving on. They didn't look anything alike. There were 3 girls. One I could tell was super tall, even sitting down, maybe as tall as I was. Her legs went on forever. She looked like she might be captain of the volleyball team, and I was pretty sure you wouldn't want to get in the way of one of her spikes. She had dark curly hair pulled back into a messy ponytail. Take out my sticky note. Another had hair the color of honey hanging to her shoulders. She was not quite so tall as the brunette, but still probably taller than most of the guys at my table. There was something intense about her. Edgy. It was kind of weird, but for some reason, she made me think of this actress I'd seen in an action movie a few weeks ago who took out a dozen guys with a machete. I remembered thinking that I didn't buy it, that there was no way the actress could have taken on that many bad guys in one, but I thought now that I might have bought it if the character had been played by this girl. The last girl was smaller, with hair somewhere between red and brown, but different than either, kind of metallic somehow, a bronzy color. She looked younger than the other two, who would have been in college easy. The 2 guys, that's because they're all like fucking 25. They've been 25 for a while, but the 2 guys were opposites. The taller one, who was definitely taller than me, I'd guess 6'5" or even more. He was clearly the school star athlete and prom king, and the guy who always had dibs on whatever equipment he wanted in the weight room. He had straight gold hair wound into a bun at the back of his head, but there was nothing feminine about it. Somehow it made him look even more like a man. He was clearly too cool for this school, or any other I could imagine. The shorter guy was wiry, with dark hair buzzed so short it was just a shadow across his scalp. Totally different, and yet they were all exactly alike. Every one of them was chalky pale, the palest of the students living in this sunless town. I stared at their faces, so different, so similar. They were all insanely, inhumanly beautiful. The girls and the guys both. Bisexual icon, Beau Swan. Their faces... they were faces you never saw in real life, just airbrushed in magazines and on billboards. So that's how we're introduced to the whole gender-swapped Cullen gang. Like I was kind of saying before, Beau is not a super hyper-masculine character or anything. Like, his only really masculine trait is that he's quite tall. So, which we find out in this very convoluted passage. There's the fucking passage about how female Emmett can crush a building in her bare hands and is also like 6'3". I saw the big blonde guy, Royal it must be, figured. Anyway, Royal had his hand casually on the hip of a really tall girl with dark curly hair who looked like she was just as familiar with the weight room as he was. He had to be a good 2 inches taller than even I was, but he only had a ½ inch on her, so he was obviously pretty sure of himself. I was still kind of surprised that he felt comfortable doing that. Not that she wasn't hot. She was super mega hot, but not approachable. Like, even The Rock wouldn't dare to whistle at her, if you know what I mean. Considering that this is almost exactly like the first Twilight book, maybe with a bit of face tuning to the writing and obviously with the gender swapped, I've realized that Twilight is fun. It's quite fun. Midnight Sun was not fun, but I'm having fun reading this. It's fast-paced, you feel like you're just chilling with your boy, Beau. It's a very easy, comforting read. I see why everyone kinda, teenage girls went feral for this in 2005. Like, it's likable. I like this. The first big event is, of course, the van scene, which I was excited for because we get to see Beau's damsel in distress capacity now that he's a man. I could hear Edith Cullen's low, frantic voice in my ear. Beau, are you all right? I'm fine. My voice sounded strange. I started to sit up and realized she was holding me against the side of her body. I must have been more traumatized than I realized because I couldn't budge her arm at all. Was I weak with shock? Be careful, she warned as I struggled. I think you hit your head pretty hard. OG Twilight is, of course, very heteronormative with its clumsy, useless damsel in distress meets strong vampire man who must save her. This completely inverts that. This is just dumb himbo wants a woman who can kill him. And honestly, me too, bitch. Another hurdle that our hero has to face is the girl's choice dance, and evading the advances of Mike/Michaela. Sorry, I'm checking my notes. Eric/Erica and Tyler/Taylor. Those are the the male characters with the original Twilight, and then, yeah, you get it by now. And also, yes, Taylor is the one who almost murdered him like a chapter ago, the driver of the van that almost crushed him to death, so that's really cool and great. What a way to atone for almost killing someone, asking them to the dance. I think I mentioned this in Midnight Sun, but the dialogue in Twilight it's fun. Yes, it's incredibly cheesy and contrived, but, like, it's kind of witty, it's kind of fun, like, whatever, it's entertaining. I am enjoying reading this book so far. The book that I read before this book was, like, pretty much an actual masterpiece, but also very, like, dystopian, grimdark, edgelord shit. This is a really welcome cleanse, honestly. One thing that felt familiar from Midnight Sun was that one passage. It's like Bella never wears makeup. Bella has like the most perfect skin you've ever seen in your life, and she's like she's too naturally gorgeous to need disgusting makeup. That is essentially applied to Edith almost exactly the same way, which I don't personally like very much. Like, I've been picturing Edith wearing at least that subtle lip color that Robert Pattinson had on in the movie. This is also the conversation that ends with Edith being like, "It would be prudent for you not to be my friend, but I'm tired of staying away from you." And then they agree to go on a little road trip to Seattle together, which never ends up happening. Just there's a lot of convoluted stuff around the setup of like them going to Seattle, and they never fucking go to Seattle. I hate this part. I'm done complaining about why the Cullens have this insane need to go back to high school over and over again when you can literally just go to college for the rest of eternity and get every degree imaginable, and that would be so much more interesting than fucking going to high school forever. Like, I realized that, like, the longer they stay in a place, like, the younger they start out in a place, the longer they can stay there. Staying somewhere longer is not fucking worth it if you have to go to high school over and over again. Jesus Christ, just get, like, multiple PhDs or something and you can probably still stay somewhere for a pretty long time. I'm done complaining about that. That's no longer the biggest plot hole in Twilight to me. The biggest plot hole in Twilight is the fucking stupid Seattle thing. But anyway, they just made plans to go to Seattle and they never go to Seattle. That's where we're at in the book. "Well," she said, "I decided as long as I was going to hell, I might as well do it thoroughly." Me when I decided to read the classically Abby fanfiction. So they have lunch together and she starts spewing even more incomprehensible riddles about secrets and desires and things. I wonder if anyone's ever got into reading Twilight without knowing the premise. Like, I wonder if anyone's ever sat there and been like, "Oh my god, what kind of cryptid is she gonna turn out to be? Whoa, what have I gotten myself into with this crazy book?" Like, I wonder if anyone doesn't know what Twilight's about. This is the scene where she's like, "What if I'm not the hero? What if I'm the villain? What if I'm dangerous?" She wanted me to be afraid of her. What I felt most was ... fascinated. What was that line from Satan Was a Lesbian? When I get afraid. So sometimes when I get scared, I get sexy. Like, it was something like that. Why is he just Cynthia? Why? Well, Bella is too, arguably. Why is Bella/Bo literally just Cynthia? So the next important scene that we arrive at is the blood typing in biology class scene, which is the scene where they have to, like, prick their fingers and find out their blood types, and Bella faints because she's afraid of blood. This never really comes up again, I don't think, in any of the books, but she's apparently made very nauseous by the sight of blood. I had my suspicions that Edith was probably not going to be allowed to, like, carry Bo, like, full damsel in distress style. I was right. But I'm choosing to picture it that way anyway. I wondered if it was supposed to bother me that she was so much stronger than I was, but I hadn't been insecure about things like this for a long time. Ever since I'd outgrown my bullies, I'd been fairly well satisfied. Sure, I'd like to be coordinated, but it didn't bother me that I wasn't good at sports. I didn't have time for them anyway. I was strong enough that I could make people leave me alone, and that was all I wanted. So this small girl was stronger than I was. A lot. But I was willing to bet she was stronger than everybody else I knew, kids and adults alike. She could take Schwarzenegger in his prime. I couldn't compete with that, and I didn't need to. She was special. Wow. Himbo writes, "This was also the point where I got extremely hyped to meet Corinne and Ernest." That would be Esme and Carlisle. Like, Esme and Carlisle have probably the most heteronormative relationship in the entire book, which is saying a lot. Like, literally, he's like the big, strong daddy figure of the family, and she just hangs out and is nice to people and has feelings, motherly vibes. That's her entire character. So I was really excited to see that flipped, and we will in fact get to them, but I'm going through all of the notes that I made while reading this chronologically, so I'm sorry, but you'll have to be in suspense like I was for a moment longer. At least you don't have to read through this entire book. That's what I'm here for. I do a public service. The next familiar Twilight milestone that we see reimagined would be the beach scene, which is, of course, the scene where Bella first meets Jacob, who is now Julie. Most of the gender swap names in this book are good. I like them. But Julie is like someone's aunt who makes good homemade biscottis, you know? Like, also Werewolf Girl Gang. Werewolf Girl Gang. I cannot stress this to you, but Werewolf Girl Gang. And in that moment, I was so lost in the hubris of simping for muscular women that I forgot how weird and racist the portrayal of the werewolves gets later in the series. Like, Native people are literal animals and abuse in their relationships is normalized because they can't control their wild instincts. Okay, Stephanie. Okay, Stephanie. Just clarifying here that I don't mean to celebrate any of that hot mess. All of the werewolves are women now. We briefly meet Sam, whose name is not changed, but her gender is. This book does, I think, put into perspective some of the reasons why the original Twilight was called, like, super cringy and annoying, and how the character of Bella was criticized for being kind of, like, not like other girls, but also, like, this useless damsel in distress, because most of the characters that Bella interacts with are men who want to date her. So, flip that, and most of the characters in this book now are women. Or girls. Most of them are teenage girls. But it feels like a book that is very driven by girls. Even if the protagonist is now male. Like, this book feels way more female-driven than the original Twilight. It just does, because most of the characters that are making any sort of impact on the story are now girls. Because in the original Twilight, the only other valid female character was Alice. Every other girl was annoying or vapid or hated Bella in some way. Like, if the goal here was to be like, see, it's not about gender. Twilight is a timeless love story that transcends gender. It's not about gender roles. Like, if that was the goal, like, I don't think it was achieved, because if anything, this just makes the original look worse. Okay, so as we know, because we're all big fans of Twilight here, who know every important plot point, Julie tells Beau the legend about the Cold Ones, which prompts him to do his little Google search montage about vampires and figure out what's going on. He also gets invited by the dudes to go see a movie and go buy corsages for the dance. This is taking the place of the time when Bella goes shopping for dresses for the dance with the ladies. This is, of course, the scene where Bella ends up getting separated from her friends, and Edward swoops in and saves her from being assaulted in a dark alleyway at night. Alan wants to go to the video game store, and Beau is just not into that dumb gamer shit, so he decides to wander off on his own. He gets cornered in a dark alleyway by some people who he like bumped into them at the airport at the very beginning of this book, so apparently this was foreshadowed, but they saw him with Charlie, so they're convinced that he's secretly a cop, and like he saw them do something shady and give him a weird look. Stephenie Meyer is Mormon, okay? She's never seen a weed before. This whole scene reads very awkwardly. Aren't you going to call for backup, officer? He asks. I had to glance behind myself again. It was just me. I think you've got the wrong guy. Sure we do, the woman said. And you didn't see anything back there either, did you? See anything? No, I didn't see anything. He was pointing a handgun at me. I thought it was the shorter guy who had the gun. Maybe they all had guns. Hey, I said, holding my hands higher so he could see they were empty. I'm not a cop. I'm still in high school. You think I'm stupid? The woman asked. You think your plainclothes getup fools me? I saw you with your cop partner. What? No, that was my dad, I said, and my voice broke. She laughed. You're just a baby pig? ? I don't believe him, the tall one said. How's that pirate song go? Dead men tell no tales. What? I asked. No, that's not necessary. I'm not telling any tales. There's nothing to tell. Our hero is threatened with imminent murder. Of course, Edith zooms in with her silver Volvo and is like, get in, you big stupid, we're going shopping. Except they don't, because boys don't go shopping. She drives him to the theater, where he was going to meet his friends. In the original, Edward drives Bella to the Italian restaurant where she was going to meet her friends. But apparently you can't go to a nice Italian restaurant with the dudes. So she drives him to the theater, but oh, don't worry, it's never Twilight without a good mushroom ravioli.
One mushroom ravioli.
As soon as they get there, Edith is just like, so, here he is, he's alive, he's living, but actually, also fuck this movie, he's taking me to dinner now, bye guys. So they leave the theater and conveniently arrive, where but a nice Italian restaurant. Instead of Edward giving Bella his jacket romantically, Edith gives Beau a scarf, which she assures him is actually a very manly scarf, because she stole it from Archie. This is, of course, when secrets begin to be revealed. We all know about Twilight here. She stared at me now, her perfect face very serious. You understand? Yes. She waited for another reaction. When I didn't say anything, her eyebrows pulled together. You can leave, you know, she told me. Your friends are still at the movie. I don't want to leave. Sometimes when I'm afraid, I get sexy. Yeah, we know, bitch. We know. He fully knows that she's a vampire now, and he's like, I don't care. I love her. She's the only one. I will ever want. I love the way that she looks at me, like I am edible. Because I am edible to her. And also like a fraction of her age. Step on me, mother. One day, Edith and Beau get to school and Jeremy sees them together. I sat next to Jeremy. He didn't keep me waiting. Dang, son, he said. Who knew you had that kind of game? I rolled my eyes. I have no game. Please, he punched my arm. Edith Cullen, come on. How did you swing that? I realize that this is not correct. I realize that Twilight will always and forever take place in 2005, but I really cannot help but picture Jeremy as like a modern thummy looking fuckboy, you know, with the fuckboy haircut and like probably wearing joggers or something. It's just what my heart tells me is true. So I guess by this point Beau and Edith are dating because he does try to do things like open doors for her and carry her bags for her, even though obviously it's unnecessary because she could lift a truck off of him. And she's just like, whatever, dumbass, go for it. I guess it's supposed to be like cute that he does these things for her anyway and tries to be chivalrous even though it's completely unnecessary. It feels in line with Bella's stubbornness. I don't mind this as a character choice. You know I love an opportunity to shit on gender roles, but I don't mind this as a character choice. Also, I know that I vomited about this already in Midnight Sun, but I really need to inflict this upon you again because I do. It's twilight, Edith murmured, looking towards the western horizon. It's the safest time of day for us, she said, answering my unspoken question. The easiest time, but also the saddest, in a way. ... The end of another day. The return of the night. Darkness is so predictable, don't you think? She smiled wistfully. I like the night. Without the dark, you'd never see the stars. That is one of those quotes that you read and you just picture it as like a cheesy 2008 edit with like some special font they downloaded from the internet and like a galaxy background and a filter over it all. Like, you know exactly, you know what I mean. You know what I mean. Yes, look at it. Look at this utter gold mine. Look at all of this hashtag deep content. How did I know? I have severe brain rot. I have an issue. Also, for some godforsaken reason, like, why does every book that I read on this channel have to have an obligatory, oh my god, women have shoulders scene? There's always that scene. Why is it? Okay. Allow me to read. She turned then with a mocking half smile, and I couldn't breathe. I'd never seen so much of her skin. Her pale arms, her slim shoulders, the fragile-looking twigs of her collarbones, the vulnerable hollows above them, the swan-like column of her neck, the gentle swell of her breasts, and the ribs I could nearly count under the thin cotton. See, this started out as, like, standard holy shit woman have shoulders, but then you got horny for her skeleton? Sir? Are you okay? There was no way this goddess could ever belong with me. She stared at me, shocked by my tortured expression. Do you want to go home? She asked quietly. You know when you just have to leave because you're too turned on by a woman's bones? I am a little bit baffled by that, to be honest. Obviously, there's a lot in the original Twilight about Bella being so delicate. I suspect that Stephenie Meyer kind of has, like, one idea of what she considers to be the perfect woman, and that comes out in both descriptions of Bella and Edith. They go to the meadow, she sparkles, you know the drill. He was kind of being a weirdo, horny for her ribcage, but then like 2 seconds later he touches her arm and she's like, you can't imagine how that feels. So like, y'all deserve each other. Twilight is kind of just about meeting someone who vibes with your personal brand of weird on a spiritual level. And oh boy, do I have some news for you about piggyback rides. Climb on my back, I blinked. Huh? Don't be a coward, Beau. I promise this won't hurt. She stood there waiting with her back towards me, totally serious. Edith, I mean, how? She spun back to me, one eyebrow raised. Surely you're familiar with the concept of a piggyback ride. I shrugged, sure, but what's the problem then? Well, you're so small. She blew out an exasperated breath, then vanished. A second later, she was back with a boulder in one hand. An actual boulder. That's not what I meant. I'm not saying you're not strong enough. So we have this obligatory, like, dudes, is it weird to get a piggyback ride from your, like, delicate short girlfriend? But also she has inhuman strength and can lift you, but, like, is it still weird? So that feels like a bit of a disclaimer on it, but he gets his piggyback ride. Now that they're officially dating, it's finally time to go meet the Cullens, to go meet the parents and the siblings, who are all vampires of around the exact same age. masquerading as a normal family. Archie immediately greets him by giving him the bro hug. You know the bro hug. I'm not gay enough looking that anyone's tried the bro hug on me, but you know, we've all seen the bro hug. So Archie gives him the bro hug and then tells him he smells nice. I imagine him just like whispering it in his ear as they bro hug. As I predicted, I am living for girl boss Corinne and her male wife husband Ernest. Twilight is a book that is just so gender, and seeing all of the roles flipped doesn't necessarily make any of these characters more interesting or more believable. It's just kind of funny. And I also just stand buff women. I just stand buff women. Or otherwise incredibly cool ones. And the original Twilight does not deliver on that. It really doesn't, and this does. During the baseball scene, because this is the scene where the bad vampires arrive, I started to wonder what their names would be, and I was like, what if Laurent is just fucking Lauren or something? Because Laurent is supposed to be like this French accented alpha male. Lauren, on the other hand, sounds like some basic girl with a annoying fuckboy boyfriend named Kevin, who you had to overhear complaining about him to her basic friends constantly in the 10th grade. So anyway, they made Lauren. It was Lauren. And Victoria Victor. That's an obvious one. And James becomes Joss. Joss catches a good sniff of Beau and decides that it is now her life's goal to hunt him for sport and eat him. The Cullens must hatch a convoluted plan to protect him. Meyer does not change the fact that they're all constantly like picking him up and carrying him around for speed and scent confusion purposes. They're all just yeeting him around like a football in this chapter. Boys don't do ballet, so instead of the ballet studio where Bella took lessons as a kid, the confrontation with Joss now takes place at the dance studio where where Beau's mom taught lessons when he was a kid. Despite the fact that vampires are supposed to be like super inhumanly hot, Joss is described as like kind of boring and average looking except for the whole red eyes thing, which I guess is the equivalent of Edward taking one look at James in Midnight Sun and being like, fucking greasy beta male. We are nearing the end now, and there's a twist. There's a twist at the end of this book, all right? Because this version of Twilight is going to only be one book and not a whole series, she decided to conveniently tie up a couple of loose ends at the end instead of leaving it open by just making Beau a vampire. I do think that this choice makes it objectively less good as a story. I know this story inside out at this point. I've read the original Twilight, I've read Midnight Sun, I've seen the movie countless times. I know the story inside out, and honestly, I was kind of half asleep for a lot of my reading of this. But oh boy, did this wake me up. And for that reason, I love it. I have no beef whatsoever with this choice. I think it's great, and I loved it. Most of his vampire transformation happens in the back of a car on the way back to Forks. The whole time Edith is being an emo little shit, like, I never should have done this to you. This is all my faults. Please forgive me. I'm so sorry. I'm shit and I suck. She is technically his creator now, because when you're bitten by a vampire, in the Twilight universe, the farther from your heart the venom goes in, the longer the transformation is going to take and the more painful it's going to be. And Joss deliberately bit him on the hand so that it would be as painful as possible. And to relieve some of that pain, Edith just goes straight for the jugular to make his transformation faster. They speedrun like all the lore, like the Volturi, all the Cullens backstories, the treaty with the werewolf. There you go. Now you know. Is it good as like a narrative? No, not really, but I'm having fun. I'm having an incredible amount of fun with the end of this book because it's just, where did that come from? I did not expect that at all. I'm going to choose to believe that Jessamine pulled a Mulan situation because I have no idea what army was letting women fight back then, but besides that, there's nothing too spicy or different about this massive lore drop. After the transformation is complete, Beau looks in the mirror and is like, holy shit, I'm hot now. Finally, I am worthy of my gorgeous goddess of a girlfriend and her perfect ribcage. Edith is fucking still being emo. And she's like, I'm sorry about, you're dead now, you're dead, your life is over. And Beau's like, it's fine, it's gonna be lit. And she's like, are you sure? Like, like, you can, like, never see your parents again, you know that, right? And he's like, yeah, fuck them. Beau also has the same, like, really impressive resistance to blood as a newborn vampire that Bella had, because newborn vampires are just kind of insane feral creatures who only think about drinking blood for, like, the first 2 years that they're a vampire. But Bella just doesn't have that problem. So they're making out in the woods. They're supposed to be hunting, and Edith is like, how are you doing this? She laughed. You're supposed to be a newborn vampire, and here you are discussing the future calmly with me, smiling at me, kissing me. You're supposed to be thirsty and nothing else. I'm a lot of else, I said. He's thirsty in a different way this time. Oh my god, are they gonna sex before marriage in this one? Stephanie? Archie and Jessamine just, like, find a charred corpse somewhere. Basically, they make it look like he had a horrific accident driving to Phoenix, because when they were running away from Joss, he stormed out of Charlie's house like, I'm going to my mom's place for a while. So they just make it look like he had an accident on the way there. He and Edith watch the funeral from a distance. All of the other Cullens are attending the funeral, but they're just watching the funeral from a distance, watching his parents and all of his school friends being distraught. But that's fine. That's great. Just don't think too hard about that. That's fine. Because they're together and they're in love and everything is great and they're planning to get married and they know in their hearts that they would have ended up exactly where they are now, no matter what, eventually. The werewolves show up and are just like, bitch, you breaking the treaty, bitch? Because we see a person who was human, like, yesterday and isn't anymore, so clearly got bitten, bitch. Except they don't say anything, actually, because they're wolves and they can't speak. So Edith is just reading their minds and translating the entire time. So they have to go to Bonnie and explain themselves and be like, actually, a bad vampire came to town and bit him and we actually totally saved him from being eaten and dying. And Bonnie is like, I guess. And then everybody goes home and lives happily ever after. The end. I think if you've been having some fun with the Twilight Renaissance lately, I would recommend reading this over the original Twilight, because if you've been having fun with the Twilight Renaissance lately, you're probably a gay 20-something. I just think, as a gay 20-something, that a book full of buff women is a little bit more up our alley, and it's here, it exists. It was a fun read. I enjoyed it. And I hope you enjoyed experiencing it along with me. Thank you ever so much for watching this video, my friends. If you enjoyed it, you can, I don't know, like and subscribe to my channel. You can support me on Patreon. I do live Q&As over there every single Wednesday for my patrons, if you want to participate in those. And, yeah, I will see you in another video very soon.